You can go down. So we'll talk about the current situation, but here are the things that I see are the biggest challenges to participating. The first one's voter registration. Because of the thing that I just talked about, which is there's all these different rules, and especially in Douglas County, we have so many people that come here from other states that have other rules. There are a lot of states now that have same-day registration, so we have a lot of people who try to register on election day because they're used to that. So knowledge of what our rules are and access to voter registration is a huge, can be a huge barrier. The other one that we talk about a lot is the bureaucracy. And we talk about it in our office as the secret handshake. We assume that everybody knows what it means to vote. Like, we talk about it with the poll workers. Like, we assume that people know who to walk up to. And when you give them a ballot, we assume that they know how to mark a ballot. And that's not always true. We have people who are naturalized citizens. We have 18-year-olds, and we even have some people who have never voted that have lived here their entire life, that it's kind of daunting somewhat, all of the different rules. And that goes to something we talk about in our office a lot, which is education. We also try, every time that we write something, to recognize that many of us in our office have a college degree, but not everybody in our community does. And so while it may make sense to us what the rules are and the things that we're sending out, does it make sense to someone who possibly does not have a college degree? Like, how are we writing it? Does it make sense in very plain language? Okay, we can go down to the next one. One of our other challenges is changing demographics. We are seeing more people in Douglas County vote in advance because more people are working in Kansas City or Topeka. The system of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Tuesday was built when people were not as mobile. And so we've tried to address that. More people, it is hard to, and if you have like a single parent with a couple jobs, having that single day of voting can be difficult. One of my biggest concerns over the past couple years has been candidates and political parties have started to use elections as the reason why they lost, other than running a bad campaign, right? So the 18-year-olds that are voting now, they all were born after 2000 and the Bush v. Gore race, and they have heard pretty much their entire life that elections is broken, that there's fraud, and so forth, and they start to lose confidence. The Pew Center, or I think it was the Brennan Center, just did a poll where they asked 18 to 24-year-olds about the democratic system, the democracy, and I think it was 40% of them said that they didn't think it was necessary. That's a concern of mine. Technology also can be a barrier. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about, we've put a ton of stuff online, and you can register online and so forth, and that's great, except for not everybody has access to the internet or computers. And I think schools are finding that out right now, that can be a barrier. And of course, everything that we put online allows us more vulnerability for an attack. We do keep all of the election stuff off the internet, so we do air gap it. And then we've really struggled over the past couple years with misinformation. So people on social media saying don't fill out a provisional ballot because they get burned in the backyard or something like that. And that can go viral pretty quick. And then resources. So we'll talk about, I'm lucky in Douglas County is that I have commissioners that are extremely supportive of many of the efforts that we do. Not every county is that lucky. And so when you talk about a mail ballot and adding postage and adding envelopes, that is a budget breaker for almost every county in Kansas. They don't have it budgeted to do that. So they have to figure out where to get those resources. We can go down. Most of you know this, but we have an August primary on the 4th, and then we have a general election on November 3rd. I was not responsible for the presidential primary for the Democratic Party. So any comments that you have about that, please give to the Democratic Party. You can go down. You know, there's really three things that we like to hit on, which is first you have to be registered, then you have to get information, and then you have to vote. So registration, and I'm going to kind of go through this real quickly because many of you may already know this, but if you go down to the next one, you know, you must be registered 21 days before the election. If you're 17 right now and you'll be 18 for the general election, you can go ahead and register. You still need to meet the 21-day deadline. So let's say you turn 18 on November 4th, you're still able to vote, but you still need to be registered 21 days prior to the election. We have some people that think they have to wait until they're 18. You can register to vote through the DMV, through kssos.org, or through ksvotes.org, or you can do it by paper. And if it's by mail, as long as it's mailed 21 days prior to the election, I can accept it. So for the primary can be confusing because, first of all, if you want to change parties, that has to be done before June 1st. So if you are registered with a party, you are locked from June 1st to September 1st. You can't change. So if you're Libertarian, Republican, or Democrat, you can't change after June 1st. That's the ballot you're going to get. You can't show up on election day and switch your party. If you're unaffiliated, you can do that. So any unaffiliated voter can declare a party on election day and receive that ballot. They have to declare. They cannot stay unaffiliated to receive a ballot. So that kind of gets confusing because people will be in line and see that somebody gets to declare a party, and then they walk up and we say, you don't get to declare a party because you already belong to a party, and we get accused of shenanigans at that moment. Photo ID. We've been doing photo ID since 2012. Nothing has really changed. A few things I like to talk about. If you're over 65, it can be an expired ID. It's any government issued ID. And we're just looking at name and photo, so it can be any government issued ID for any state or territory that belongs to the United States. We still have the free Douglas County photo ID, so if someone needs an ID, we will make one for them. So that shouldn't be a barrier. DouglasCountyElections.com it's a great resource that we've tried to build. So if you go on there and you put in your name and your birth date, you'll see the ballot that's assigned to you. You'll find your polling place. You can check the status of your advanced ballot now. So for anybody that's requested an advanced ballot, if you go in there, it'll say ballot request. It'll say that we've received it. When we send your ballot, it will now say the date that we sent your ballot. And then if we've received your ballot back, it'll say the date that we've received your ballot back. That's a big question that we get with mail voting a lot, is people want to know if we've received it. So now they can check on that. We also have a new elections hub. So if you go to DouglasCountyElections.com, you'll see at the top something that says, new elections hub. It's really kind of exciting. We worked with our GIS department. You can now click on the new elections hub. You can click on a map and you can see how many people are registered to vote and in what precincts. And we update that at 4 o'clock every night. Did that work?
I think it's working on it. There.
Okay. Okay, go down and hit Election Information Hub. This is a brand new thing that we did, and I'm really excited about it. First of all, there's all the things that you can do, how to register and stuff. But if you go down to who's voting, if you go to registered voters in Douglas County and hit Explore, it's going to pull up a map. Like I said, we update this at 4 o'clock every night. It tells you how many registered voters we have by party, and what our voting age population estimate is, and kind of how many people are registered to vote. And then when you click on a precinct, it will tell you the statistics within that precinct. So like precinct 51 right there, how many registered voters there are, what parties they belong to. The other part, there's a map in there that tells you how many people have returned advanced ballot requests. so you can see that. And then one of my favorite new maps in there will tell you what candidates have filed for your area. So if you go back, and go down to who's running and click on candidates for office lookup. So hit explore. We're updating this every night also. And so when you click on, you can click anywhere. Then over on the right is the list of offices, and if you click on the office, over on the right there's a menu that says presidents. Click on any one of those, it'll show you who's filed for that office in your area. So we're pretty excited about that because it is different. And we also have now added, if they've given us their email or a website, we're adding that to their information so that you can contact those candidates. All right, if you want to go back to the slides, there we go. So let's go down. So advanced voting starts 20 days prior to the election. That's July 15th for the primary and October 14th for the general. We'll talk a little bit about the advanced sites here in a second, but we do have Saturday and extended hours. If you go down advanced vote by mail, we sent out the mailer. A couple things is if you want advanced vote by mail, we still need your Kansas driver's license number or a copy of your ID, because we do check your ID for mail. We mail those ballots 20 days prior to the election. Probably the biggest problem that happens is people forget to sign their envelope when they return them. So if you forget to sign them, we will call you and get your signature, but it's a lot easier if you just remember to sign it. Under new law, you can now drop them off at any polling place. They have to be dropped off by 7 p.m. on election day, or postmarked on election day and received by the Friday after the election. So that's been kind of new, that we now have kind of rolling results, because we'll have the results on election night and then we'll have the results that are added on Friday. Let's go to the next one. Most of you know about our polling sites. We're going to talk about those. You must go to your assigned polling site at this moment. Every voter should be offered the ability to cast a ballot if it's provisional or a regular ballot. Let's go on down. So I kind of skipped through the other stuff because I wanted to talk about what's going on right now. So our office has been working on a plan to try to figure out how we do voting in a time of a pandemic. So there's some changes. The first one is the mailer that we normally mail in September, we mailed in April. We have never mailed before a primary before, largely because not everybody participates in a primary, and a primary can be confusing. We've received 11,000 back as of today. In 2018, we received 13,000. So we're on track to be the same kind of response that we've had. Although 41% of those of the ones we've entered about 6,000 are people who've never voted in a primary. So it will be interesting to see how that impacts the primary turnout. So in-person advanced voting is what we're working on, and I don't have any answers at the moment, which is we have to have social distancing. And if you've ever voted in the courthouse on advance, you know that social distancing is impossible. The rotunda is not built for a large group of people. So we are in the process of trying to find an alternate location for in-person voting for advance that is large space that allows people to stand in line 6 feet away from each other. I don't have that solidified yet. We hope to announce that pretty soon. The other thing that we're working on as a plan is drive-through voting, where you would not get out of your car. So you would show up, you would sign in, you would receive a ballot, and you would vote that from your car, and that would minimize the kind of personal interaction between the poll worker and the voter. A friend of mine in Johnson County, Iowa is doing that right now, and I've kind of been borrowing ideas from him. And we'll talk about the protective measures. So if you go down election day, some things that are going to look different on election day. First of all is polling places. We have at this moment been notified by at least 7 polling places which we cannot use because of the COVID-19 situation. We're losing about 1 a week. So we're trying to get them to nail down, and I know it's difficult for many of them, but we haven't made any announcements because we're still trying to find alternative locations. But you can expect all of the places that we vote that are in assisted care facilities are no longer available to us. And then some of our polling places are just not built for social distancing. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to announce changes to polling places. It's just going to look different because we need to make it safe for our election board workers also. So every voter will get a single-use stylus or pen that is theirs to keep. So when you sign in on the election tablet, you use the stylus, you use the pen to mark your ballot, and when you walk out, you take that with you. So we will not have shared pens. All of the election board workers are going to have some sort of personal protective equipment, and they will sit behind protective screens. So they'll have plastic screens that they sit behind. We're going to provide more distance between the booths, and then we're adding to our election board someone who will be going through and kind of cleaning throughout the day. I will tell you that this has been difficult as we try to figure it out. If you ever think about those of you that are poll workers, which I know a lot of you are, if you think about a polling place, it is pretty much a germ factory. The shared pins, the shared poll booths. What we have been told by the CDC is that it does not sit on paper very well, so ballots is not as big of a concern. But one of the things that's been happening in some counties is they're using the hand sanitizer, and then it's going on the ballots, and then it's jamming the machines. So we have to kind of provide hand sanitizer, but recognize that it has an impact on ballots. A few more things, and then I'll take questions real quick. But we're coming up on redistricting that always impacts Douglas County. At this time, vote centers won't happen until 2021, and that is a county decision. And that's one that I want to have a conversation with the community about, because vote centers while they have some pros, there are also cons to them, because you have to be hooked up to the internet in order to run a vote center. And right now, I do not hook up the polling places to the internet for security reasons. And I have places like Vinland where trying to figure out how I would have secure internet has presented some challenges. And I will not hook up to the internet unless I'm convinced that it's secure. So right now on election day, there's no way to attack our polling places. So that's my largest concern. We started audits in 2019, and so now after every election, we audit 1% of the precincts before the canvass, and that is done publicly, and that is at random. I'm really glad that we started the audits. It'll be interesting, the role of the federal government, because the federal government doesn't really have a strong role in elections, but this past year, there's been lots of discussions about that. So I think that will be an interesting thing that happens over the next few days, next few months. And there's discussions about same-day registration, automatic voter registration. I think all of that has kind of been put on the back burner as we deal with the pandemic. The last couple things, and then I'll take questions. If you go down, this quote is probably one of my most favorite quotes. If you've never watched LBJ's speech on voting rights to Congress, go Google it on YouTube. It is one of my favorite things to listen to remind me about why I do what I do. And in there he said the most basic right of all was the right to choose your own leaders. And I truly believe that. And if you go down, our mission for the Douglas County Clerk's Office is to provide a safe, secure, fair election process and promote active participation of all the citizens in the process. And probably the safe and secure In the past couple of years, the secure part has been a huge part of our focus. I would say the safe part has probably become a huge part of our focus over the past couple months as we try to figure out how we make it safe to vote. So I'll take questions.
Unmuting myself is a good idea. Okay. So it says, Ann Gardner asks, can you go through the steps you take to ensure the authenticity of mail ballots?
I only caught about every third word.
Let me try that again.
Okay.
Can you go through the steps you take to ensure the authenticity of mail ballots?
Oh, okay. So actually, we go through quite a few steps. The first one is we do signature matching. So when you fill out the application, so we have your signature on file from every time that you've registered to vote or signed anything, we scan that signature. When we get your application, we verify the signature. And then when we receive the ballot back, we verify the signature. So we match it against your signatures. And because we have a history of your signatures, if there's a deviation, we're able to kind of figure it out. And we've kind of done some handwriting type of courses to help us out. But if it doesn't match for some reason, let's say there's been a health event or something like that, we will contact you, verify that it's you, and then ask you to sign a new signature card so we have that on file. And then the driver's license or the ID is what we use for ID. So when you give us your Kansas driver's license, we run that through the Kansas DMV to verify that that is your driver's license. And they also have a signature on file. So we use that. And if you are using a non-Kansas driver's license, we just need a copy of it as from Colorado or something like that. We really don't see too many fraudulent activity as far as somebody trying to fake a signature. What we usually see is a husband or wife who sign for each other. They've been asking them to sign it and they haven't signed it. They're like, well, I'll just sign it and send it in. And then we'll call and say, no, we need the signature of the person who did it.
Okay. About how long does it take for each ballot?
Well, it kind of depends. It kind of depends. Most of the signatures, you see it real quick and it matches. Mm-hmm. And then what we do is as people are entering them, then if there's a question that goes to another pile, and then we have a second person look at it. Mm-hmm. And then that second person then follows up. And then that way you have two different people that look at it versus just that one person making that decision.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay.
But I will tell you, so I mentioned we've received 11,000 applications. We've entered 6,000. Okay. We can enter about 500 a day. So it's going to take us a few days to try to get caught up. It has slowed down how many we're getting. But with social distancing in our office, we have limited the amount of people that are in our office doing entering at the moment.
Okay. Then let's see. How do you feel if Kansas changed to all mail ballots in the future?
Well, I think that has to be a discussion. I don't think it's going to happen this year.
Okay.
When it has been discussed in the legislature, it has not gone very far because of concerns about in the legislature. So I think, Colorado, Utah, Washington, Oregon have moved there. Oregon's done it for 20 years. So I think there's some education involved. I've always thought that it would have some positive response in Western Kansas, where polling places have kind of been limited and people have to drive, that mail ballot would have, there'd be some acceptance of that. But I think it's a conversation that will go on in Kansas for a while. And now there's a lot of politics involved in it. So I think for right now, we'll continue to kind of just have that hybrid system.
Okay. Can advance mail-in ballots still be requested? How do we do that if the original item mailed to us has been lost?
Yes, so you can request a mail-in ballot until the Tuesday before the election. I don't recommend waiting that long because of time in the mail, but you can go to ksvotes.org and you can apply there, and that will send us an application. Or we have the application on our website. You can print it out and send it to us. And if you don't have access to those, you can dial 832-5267 and we'll send you an application. So there's still plenty of time to fill out an application.
Great. When do you count mail-in ballots?
So by Kansas law, we can start prior to 7 o'clock on election night. It kind of depends on how many we have. We may start a couple days ahead. We have an advance board made up of both parties that assist with that. The key in law is that we can't tabulate anything. So we can run ballots, we just can't hit any tabulation and see what any of the results are. So we don't hit tabulation until after 7 o'clock on Tuesday night. But in a big general election, we may start like on that Monday.
Okay.
I forgot to also mention one of the new things. So we have received $115,000 from the CARES Act to go towards COVID response for elections. We just learned that about a week ago from the Secretary of State's office. One of the things we're going to buy are drop boxes. We're going to buy 4 to 5 drop boxes, and we're going to put them in secure locations across town. So if people are not comfortable sending their ballot back, they'll have options to drop it off. And then we also got the law changed where you can also drop it at any polling place. So it doesn't have to come back through the mail.
Okay. Let's see, and here we go. You mentioned that there are 101 county clerks, but there are 105 counties. What consolidation has been done?
Well, there's 4 election commissioners. And then as far as county clerks, like Johnson County combined their county clerk and register of deeds into what's called a director of records management. And then Sedgwick, Shawnee, and Wyandotte still have a county clerk, but they don't run elections.
Okay. And then what is the timeline for sending out the application for mail-in ballot for November election?
So we sent a combination of spring and November. And then in September, what we're going to do is we're going to do a supplemental mailing. We're going to run a list of everybody who basically registered to vote from when we mailed in April through September and do a supplemental mailing for those people that may not have received the April mailing.
That's great. Because likely we'll see a surge in registrations in that time too.
Right.
Hopefully.
And some people are waiting. We've had people call and say, I'm just not sure, because one of the things is once we've sent you an advance ballot, you can't change your mind and go to the polling place. Once there's been a ballot sent to you, now you could call now and we could remove it. But once we've sent a ballot to you, there's a ballot out in your name. So if you go to a polling place, it's going to be a provisional ballot because we have a ballot somewhere in the world with your name on it.
Question then, what if they lose their ballot?
Contact us and we have a way to replace your ballot.
Okay. What if you realize it on election day?
Go to your polling place. So you do a provisional ballot, and the provisional ballot will count if we haven't received your ballot. So all the provisional ballot does is hold it so that if we receive it in the mail, because we will have people call and say, well, I mailed it on Monday. I don't know if you're going to get it. What should I do? And we say, go to your polling place. You'll vote provisional. If we receive your mail ballot, the provisional won't count. But if the mail ballot doesn't show up, then your provisional will count.
Okay, sounds good. Have you seen an increase in registrations from ksvotes.org?
Yes.
Yes? Good.
We are largely, between that and the DMV registration, most of our registration is moved to electronic submissions. We do not have as much paper registration as we used to.
About how many registrations have you received, like since all of since the onset of the pandemic? Do you have any idea?
Registrations have stayed about the same.
Okay.
So we've not seen an increase in registrations. Usually that happens as we get closer to the election.
The
I think
election.
part of that also, in what has been interesting for us, was the students didn't come back.
Right.
And so that population, which would be new registrations and stuff, have not come back to our community. And I think that's one of the things that we're talking about in our office is if KU moves to some sort of online classes and there's not as many students that come back in the fall, how that impacts like our numbers and stuff.
That's right. Sorry.
That's fine.
There's somebody out front. What was I just going to ask you? Oh, and how will that impact? Because if they're registered here, then they're not. If they need to change their address, that could be a whole
Yes.
issue. Yeah. And as far as high school students, have you seen, because the league did send out a PowerPoint presentation and instructions that all of the school districts were going to share with their juniors and seniors. Have you seen, as far as high school registrations, have you?
We did see quite a few high school registrations from Baldwin.
Okay.
And then but that would probably be the one that was the most noticeable.
Okay. But nothing, like, nobody's registering. There hasn't been a tremendous drop either.
No.
Good. Good. That's encouraging considering, how things have changed so drastically, and we haven't been able to help with any kind of in-person voter registration. Let's see. Does anybody? I don't have any other questions from. Hang on, I do. What is the role of the Secretary of State compared to the county clerk, and what are the differences?
Well, there's a misperception the Secretary of State kind of runs elections, and the Secretary of State does not. The Secretary of State can provide guidance under law, but each individual county election officer is responsible for their county. So it's a relationship where the counties and the Secretary of State kind of work together, but there's not a relationship where the Secretary of State can tell us what to do. One of the biggest things that is voter registration. So the Secretary of State's office does not have access to the voter registration list to make changes and stuff. That has to happen at the county level. So there's a misperception that the Secretary of State has the authority to remove people and stuff, and they do not. That happens at the county level.
Okay. Is that true not just for Kansas, but nationwide?
Pretty much nationwide. Now, what's been interesting is as these grants are happening, they're going through the Secretary of State's office. And that happened with HAVA, so it's not just with the CARES Act. And that has increased the role of the Secretary of State because they can help guide how that money is spent.
Okay. Interesting. There was a follow-on question to that. Hang on. What do you think of the ideas proposed to use 17-year-old people at local polling places?
Well, I think actually you can be 16 or above to work. And we have a few students that do that now. And we've had success with that. And so I think it helps with supplementing our boards. But I think there's a misperception that we want to go out and replace all the boards with 17-year-olds, and that is not true. I think there's two parts. I think we're trying to recruit younger board workers to help. I will say that we have been losing some board workers that are concerned about the upcoming elections, and I understand that, and I respect that. So I think that's where kind of that recruitment's coming from, but it is not where we want to replace everybody. And I can see some of the board workers there. I want you to know that I'm not trying to replace you.
So let's see. For anybody that hasn't done it before, how do you go about becoming a board worker or precinct?
If you go to douglascountyelections.com, there's actually a sheet that you fill out and send to us. And then, there's things about like, do you want to just work in your precinct? Are you willing to go elsewhere? Those type of things. But yes, we are recruiting individuals to help us out.
Okay. We can help with that too. From SEAL, how does the new applications tracking info from the Kansas Secretary of State work with the county information?
The new applications tracking info?
You want to clarify that, SEAL?
Yes, we were just looking at that the other day, and the Secretary of State has some information about tracking who's applied for a ballot. And it was a surprise to me, but one of our members found it and on the Secretary of State's website, and I didn't know how that worked with following county information. So I didn't know if it was one big system that you all fed into or what was happening there.
Yeah, it's one large system, and so they would just be able to run a report because they run all the statewide reports for all of the state candidates and stuff. So they would just run a report on that. And if you're interested, we didn't look at it on the Elections Hub for us. There is a map where you can click on it and see how many people have asked for an advance ballot by precinct in Douglas County. And then when ballots start coming back, you'll be able to see what the returns are by precinct. But it's an aggregate data. It is not individual data.
That's cool.
Is that at douglascountyelections.com?
Yes.
It's that Elections Hub, right?
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions for Jamie? Let me see. So do you feel like we're going to have enough poll workers for Douglas County?
I think so. Part of that is we're going to have some polling place consolidation because I have some precincts that there's not an option. I've tried to avoid that in my time, but we're going to have to probably combine a few. But, we have pretty remarkable election board workers. When we had the blizzard a few years ago, I had election board workers that walked in 12 inches of snow to go open their polling place. And so we've reached out to many of them, and many of them have said we're still going to show up. Often it is the poll workers that have underlying health issues that just don't want to risk it, and I totally understand that. I will not have a judgment on anybody who doesn't do it, but right now we are still staffed pretty well.
Staffed pretty well. What about those areas that are the underserved, underrepresented areas that typically have the low voter turnout? Will those areas for sure have the precincts that they have, or what kind of focus will you put on those?
Yeah, I will do everything I can to keep the polling places as near to the precincts as possible. I read a really interesting article a few years ago called the cost benefit analysis of voting that talked about that voters make some sort of cost benefit analysis discussion in their head if it's too far to go vote, right? If it's too hard to go vote, they're like, is it worth it for me? So we will do everything we can to make it as accessible as possible. So we're trying to find places where we are going to have to kind of do some consolidation. We're trying to find places that are on major roads and that are really easy to find and get to.
Okay. There was another couple of questions down here. What are the best ways to inform people about registration deadline? And a lot of people don't read the newspaper or other old media.
That's probably one of our biggest challenges is how we get information out. We no longer have television. When we lost the Baldwin and Eudora kind of news, that was a huge way that we got information out. And I will tell you that we're constantly trying to figure out the ways that we get that information out. We do social media, but not everybody uses social media. So we try to do it with mailers, but largely groups like yours, we rely on to help us with that.
Okay, and then, hang on. Can public transit be used to get people to polling places?
Yes, Lawrence a few years ago actually passed a rule that on election day that public transit was free. And I expect that they will continue to do that. And as we move polling places, we always look and see what bus stops are nearby to try to be near bus stops.
Okay.
Question?
Let's see. Yes.
Does a poll worker sign up for 12 hours? And is there a way that two people can split?
Yes.
Worker position.
Yes, we got that law changed a few years ago. So the supervising judge and one other person have to be there for full time, and they have to be from different parties. But the rest of the board can be a split shift, which runs from about 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then 1 p.m. until you close, which is about 8 o'clock or so. So we can split that shift. And it is a lot easier if you've already found that person, that you can say, I'll take the morning and this person will take the afternoon. So you can split it. Because it is a really long day.
Even at half shift, it is a long day. Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody else have questions? This was a lot of really good information, Jamie.
Have a
Well,
question.
oh, go ahead.
Jamie, is the courthouse available for people to come right to your office and register?
Yes. Yes, we're open. And so we're also open for precinct committee filings and so forth. So you can come straight to our counter. We've put up a plastic shield, so there is some separation between us. But we are open.
Great.
I just wanted to say we have a very small staff, and so a lot of what we get accomplished is through your organization, and we are very appreciative of everything you do with voter registration and kind of get out the vote, because I don't really have the staff to kind of go work fairs and stuff like that. And so we rely on you guys and we appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We've, most of the people here on this call, I think, know some of the things that we've been doing, but we did get all the information in the school lunch sacks that people picked up. We got flyers distributed at Just Food when people were picking up the food distributions there and at the Ballard Center. Melissa isn't on the call, so she has a more complete list, but and then we're working with the Restaurant Association and the Chamber to get some of the restaurants around town already have the flyers up and have them posted like for carry out and have that QR code up there. So we're getting creative. Oh, and we're doing the Cruising for Voters on Monday, Memorial Day. 11:30, we'll meet at the Keller Williams parking lot over 6th and Lawrence and just do a cruise through town. We'll head toward Mass Street and then over toward East Lawrence and back around. So it'd be great.
Somewhere I have a large that I'm voting sign with the Douglas County Elections website on it. If you wanted to borrow it.
Yeah, I'd love to borrow it. That'd be great. Let me make a note. That'd be great. And we have some posters too. And I talked with Rochelle from the Journal World earlier too. So she'll be putting that information in the paper this weekend too.
Good.
So hopefully we'll get some publicity there. Lori Lamp asked, lunch sacks in Lawrence. In Lawrence, yes. And we did get the information into, I think, Lecompton. I'm not certain that we got it into the Baldwin and Eudora I don't think that we were able to get it into their lunch programs. In fact, I think that they had to cut their lunch programs off, if I remember correctly.
I don't know if you're aware, if you want to get information in Baldwin, the church news is a good way to get information out.
The church news? Okay.
Yes, they have kind of a newsletter that goes through the churches and stuff, and it's called the church news.
Okay.
And I know there's a couple efforts in Eudora and Baldwin to try to get some startup news out and about. So as I get that information, I can pass it along.
Okay. Is that the one that, did you say Eudora, right?
Yes, right.
That Terry Finneman's working with?
Yeah, and there's another effort down in Baldwin.
Okay, good. Good. Okay. Anybody else?
I would just like to say thank you all for joining us today via our Zoom experiment. Thank you so much, Kristen, for spearheading this and getting it going. And I think probably future topics, we might be hot topics, we might be doing this way also. So stay tuned for future hot topic events.
And Jamie, it'd be great if we could maybe do this again in August, September.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because who knows, like we talk about here, we can make all the plans that we've got right now, and who knows what it's going to look like at that point.
Exactly. Very true.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today, Jamie. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again soon. See you Monday, hopefully. Bye-bye.